All right, let's talk about something we've all seen. You know that person, the one who genuinely seems to prefer their own company? We call them a loner, right? But is that picture we have in our heads really accurate? Or is there something much, much deeper going on psychologically? It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer? Wow, it could totally change how you think about social connection. Because for a long time, we've basically slapped some pretty negative labels on anyone who spends a lot of time by themselves.
Yeah, you know the ones. Antisocial, awkward, lonely. These are the words that just pop into our heads. We see someone choosing to be alone and, we immediately jump to this conclusion that something's off. Like they must be sad or they're just bad with people.
Well, it turns out that's a massive misconception. And in this explainer, we're going to tear that whole idea apart. We're going to look at the actual psychological research that separates the myths from the reality of being alone.
So, what if those labels are just missing the entire point? What if choosing to be alone isn't some kind of social failure, but it's actually a sign of a totally different kind of psychological wiring? The science is pretty clear on this. To really get it, you can't just look at the behavior, you have to dig deeper and find out the reason behind it. And this, right here, is where things get super interesting. Psychologists have found that the motivation, the why behind being alone, that's the single most important piece of the puzzle. It's the key that unlocks this whole thing. And a top researcher in this field, Dr. Julie Boker, she just nails it with this quote. She gets right to the heart of the matter. See, not all social withdrawal is the same. Not even close. The why, it changes absolutely everything. So basically, it all boils down to this huge split. On one side, you've got people pulling back because of fear or social anxiety. But on the other side, you have people who withdraw because of a genuine preference for being alone. Researchers actually have a name for this second type. They call it unsociability. And let me tell you, it is a universe away from being antisocial. Okay, so first, let's quickly talk about that anxious retreat. This is the stereotype we all think of, right? When being alone isn't really a choice. It's more like a defense mechanism. You see, when someone is avoiding people because they're afraid, yeah, they can miss out on some really important stuff, like social support and building up their social skills. This is the kind of withdrawal that studies link to negative things like loneliness and depression. But, and this is a huge but, it's not the only reason people seek out solitude. All right, now let's flip the coin over and look at the complete opposite, the creative sanctuary. This is where solitude isn't a hiding place at all. It's a space for creativity, for reflection, for just recharging your batteries. And let's be super clear here. People on this path are not antisocial. It's not that they dislike people. Not at all. They just genuinely find their own company to be productive and, really pleasant. They might not always be the one to start a conversation, but that doesn't mean they'll turn down an invitation either. I mean, just think about someone like Henry David Thoreau. He retreated to that cabin in the woods, not because he was scared of society, but because he needed the mental space to think deeply and create his most amazing work. It was a choice, a totally productive one. And get this isn't just some vague philosophical idea. It is a real, measurable psychological trait. In fact, researchers like Jerry Berger have developed actual tools, like this preference for solitude scale, to scientifically pinpoint who these people are, the ones who choose and actually benefit from being alone, and separate them from people who are just shy or lonely. So what are these solitude seekers actually like on the inside? Psychologically speaking, what are their defining traits? The research points to this really fascinating cluster of traits. Okay, so first, they tend to have a super low tolerance for fake behavior. They're all about authenticity. They'd much rather have one deep, meaningful conversation than 100 shallow ones. They also tend to be incredibly self-reliant. They like to figure things out on their own. And this one's huge. They resist groupthink. They trust their own judgment over the crowd's. And finally, they're deep processors. They really analyze social interactions, which, yeah, can be exhausting, but it also leads to some incredible insights. Okay, so after hearing all that, you're probably thinking these people spend all their time alone, right? That they're basically hermits. Well, the actual data is going to surprise you. Okay, check this out, because the data is wild. One study found that people with a high preference for solitude still spent over 80% of their free time with other people. I mean, look at that. It's barely different from the other group. The real difference, the game changer, is right here on this bottom row. They found their time alone to be way, way more pleasant. They actually enjoyed it.
And this just nails the core idea, doesn't it? It was never about the amount of social time. It was always about the quality of their alone time. For these people, solitude isn't some empty void to be afraid of. It's a fulfilling, necessary space for recharging and deep thinking.
So clearly, we need a whole new way to think about this. It's time to redefine what being alone can actually mean, and just throw out those old, dusty stereotypes of the sad, lonely loner.
Let's give it a name: productive solitude. See, it's not a bug, it's a feature. For some people, it's the operating system that lets them do their best thinking, be their most creative, and become their most self-aware. It's not a sign of emptiness, it's a sign of a rich inner world.
And this really just sums it all up, doesn't it? If any of this sounds like you, it probably just means your mind values truth more than belonging, and depth more than noise. It is not a flaw that you need to fix. It's a unique strength that has its own incredible advantages.
So the last thing I want to leave you with is a question, and it's a personal one. When you choose to be alone, are you running from the world, or are you running to a deeper part of yourself? Is it a retreat from fear, or is it a sanctuary for growth? Because honestly, the answer to that doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how you see everybody else too.